let's get started. Yeah, hello everybody for this next session in the Ask Tom series about our spatial technologies. And I'm very happy that we have a very special guest today. He's not in this spatial realm. He's somebody from outside we could convince to present his experiences with working with 3D data today. So welcome to Paul Parkinson. Paul, do you want to say a few more words about you?
Sure.
Yourself?
Yeah. I'm so psyched about this because I'm a big fan of the spatial group. I say I'm a spatial groupie is what I say. It's because I'm not in the group, but I love it. So I've been at Oracle, real quick intro. I've been at Oracle 21 years. My background for most of that is transaction processing. So I was the transaction processing lead for WebLogic, and worked, 50% of the time with the database because of the transaction processing in Oracle, of course. And so then I went over maybe 8 years ago over to the Kubernetes team actually for a couple of years in OCI, and then came back and did the transaction processing for microservices in Helidon. And I've always presented and written blogs, so and done a lot with the database team. So I guess about 3 years ago, I became a developer advocate and moved out of core development and do developing for developer advocacy. And I've just moved to a broader thing where it encompasses most of the database. So I know Spatial's been in the database, I think Melly said maybe 25 years, but I've really just started diving into the goodness of it the last couple of years. So anyway, super excited and appreciate being invited.
Yeah, and I'm very excited to have you presenting, and I think it's cool stuff you're going to show us today. So, but before you do that, I have the more boring part of just do some recap on what's already there and what some of you might already know. So the technical part I'm going to just talk about in a few seconds, but I also want to remind you that all of our sessions are recorded, and you can find them in the Ask Tom dashboard. Or just search for the Spatial series, and there you can also see the link to the recordings. And if there are any questions that you want to address to us after the session, then just use our email addresses to send them to us. Okay, so for the more boring part, because you probably already know about it, so Oracle Spatial has been around for many, many years, and also the support for 3D data has been around for quite a while. Not that long as for spatial in general, but we do support 3D data already for quite some time. And what's actually included in this support for 3D data, so if you look more closely to it, then first of all, the thing that probably most of you should be familiar with is the support for 3D vector data. And by vector data, we typically also can use the terms of 3D geometries or 3D features. So these terms are very commonly used for describing vector data. And working with vector data, regardless of whether they are 3D, 2D, or 4D, includes operations or operators and functions for detecting spatial relationships, for filtering spatial data, and other kind of utilities. So that's also applies for 3D vector data, of course. And in order to work with 3D data, we also need to consider the 3D coordinate reference systems. So we do support those as well in order to get the right place on the map, regardless of where this place on Earth is, and regardless of whether which coordinate system is used for it. We also do support 3D data with regard to spatial indices. So indices are created to boost the performance when querying, processing spatial data. So that's something we also support. And looking forward, the other things we do support is, of course, there is another type of modeling spatial data called linear referencing system. We do support 3D LRS objects as well. We can use JSON, the support included in the database for JSON, which extends the GeoJSON function for 3D. So this is something we can also use. And there are also there's also another type of data model where we that is specifically used for so-called point clouds. So something that LiDAR instruments can create, so points representing objects or surfaces. This is something we also support. And when it comes to surface modeling, we have the support for creating digital elevation models or triangulated irregular networks. And the last thing here in this row is I already talked about a little bit or touched upon it during my last session. It's 3D meshes. And when it comes to 3D meshes, let me just get back to what we have presented during the CloudWorld. All the things that are new in Spatial 23C, the new Oracle Database version 23C, you can find as a recording or as a digital session recorded and downloadable, or you can view it via this link up here. So this videohub.oracle.com link. If you search there for either the session ID DIG 3517 or just Spatial 23C, you should find the digital session and you can look at that. And what this slide is about, that we do have spatial support inside every Oracle database, regardless of where it is deployed, regardless of what kind of data you want to work with, regardless of whether we are talking about a database that is provided as a database service, and also regardless of whether it's standard edition, enterprise edition, a free edition, the free developer edition. So you can work with spatial data without limits in any of our Oracle data, in any of the Oracle databases. And that applies for the different data you can use or you can store in the Oracle database. You can combine spatial data with all the other types, JSON, XML, graph data, relational data, blockchain. So you have SQL as the way to access your data, and you can combine all these different types of data. You can work with spatial data, whether it's they are used in a data warehouse or in a transactional system. And it also does not matter whether you develop your applications using Python, using .NET or Apex. So it's there on your fingertips, and just make best use of it. And the last slide I want to just focus on before I hand over to Paul is I also briefly touched the 3D new features in 23C. And this is especially related to 3D LiDAR data, where we introduced new functions. One is the change detection. So if you compare 2 point clouds, you can detect the differences between those point clouds. You can also determine vertical cross sections if you compare a 3D LiDAR object with a vector plane. And you can also create 3D meshes from existing point data. This is just a reminder, last slide, of what you already heard last time, and we have planned to dig into more details regarding these features also in a separate session. But that's what I wanted to just recap, and now it's your turn, Paul, to take over and enjoy us with what you have done.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen. Let me share my deck here. Okay. So this is the title of the session. And so these are all the people that you probably know. And then other just spatial greats I mentioned on here. I think Daniel is the first person I met on the spatial team, and I was asking him about LiDAR. He introduced me to LAS tools and things like that and use cases. Surya is the one that showed me a lot of code to do some of the diff, the things I wanted to do with the diff functionality that Karen just mentioned. And then and Mark Horhammer, I have an hour meeting that we have recorded, and it is worth $1,000 in information. It's just awesome. I learned so much from that. So I just wanted to mention them. Those are, and everybody else on this page. So I'm going to start just by, let me move this Zoom window out of the way here. This is kind of the, rough agenda I'm going to go through. I'm going to start with this this experience that I put together for Oracle CloudWorld, because it touches on a number of these different technologies with spatial. And then I'm going to go through what the actual title of this is, the scanning, modeling, printing, and then just come back. I'm going to be talking about the Oracle Converged Database that Karen was mentioning throughout this, because it really is. I chose to do this. It is an awesome product for being able to come up with, to exploit all the features in the database and really make it a smart database is a term I just came up with. It really is a smart database. It's not just something where, you dump your information. And that's becoming more and more important as time goes on, really. So I just like to really stress that. That's just such a powerful aspect of the Oracle database. So I'll be touching on that as we go along. But just very quickly, my first kind of use or exposure or whatever of Spatial was for a workshop I wrote. It's very popular, which is great, which is simplifying microservices with the Converged Database. So in that workshop, we show how you can, the Oracle database is perfect for microservices, because even though it's not generally considered a lightweight database, and microservices, it has this one-to-one application to database pattern, or that falls perfectly in line with Oracle database. Even though Oracle database is this multi-purpose database, it's still perfect for microservices. And so that's why I wrote this workshop. And so I won't go too deep into that, but one of the things in the workshop is the fact that we use an online food delivery app to show these aspects of the Converged Database. And one aspect is spatial delivery. So I just took that, and it shows the the map, the routes between the restaurant and the home that's receiving the food, to show spatial. And so I took that, and I've been basically, let me turn off the volume there. I've been going through the different workshops and making XR versions of them. And this was the first to do that. So this is doing is showing spatial, but it's showing spatial with augmented reality or mixed reality technically. And so you have an actual 3D map. And so that map integration that we have, that applies in XR as well. And so what you're seeing here is an actual 3D map of the route using the spatial API to route between them. Okay. And so you will see, let me just scoot forward on this. This is Philadelphia, and you can see the routes that it's taking. And again, that's using spatial in the database. Okay, so that's just was my foyer, my first venture into it. So Oracle Spatial, the PC diff functionality that is just so powerful in 23C, the object format and simplification. So you get the idea of the point cloud diff. When I found out about that, I was like, that's so powerful. I want to show that off in some way. We were thinking about different, just so many use cases, and that's a big part of what this presentation is just unbelievable amount of use cases, taking two 3D objects and the difference between the two of them. And so when I found out about that, we were talking about using, maybe two different disk breaks and comparing the diff. But what I decided to do was to actually, I've been doing a lot with 3D scanning and 3D printing over the last few years. And so I'll show you, what we did in the next slide as far as using an actual hand with a ring to do the point cloud diff. But that's, one of the big features used. When I started talking with the spatial team, I said, what would be awesome is if you could bring in this OBJ format. It's basically the most popular 3D format, and work off of that and do a diff on that. And they said, well, actually, in 23C, we have added a feature where you can create a mesh from a point cloud. So it's, that's perfect. The two of them work together so well that just, multiplies the use cases. And you can tell I'm psyched about this stuff because I'll talk about this object format, for the next 45 minutes or whatever. But this is the great format to support. As far as file formats go, this has been around since the 80s. And, we've seen property files, XML, YAML, JSON, and things like that in the last 10, 20 years. But this is still the most popular 3D format. So the guys at Wavefront that created this format it's simple, but it encompasses everything you need as far as the polygons and texture applications and things like that. So, and if you're a nerd like me into Tron, one interesting fact is there were three 3D companies that made the Tron movie back in '80, and Wavefront was one of them. So they're using OBJs, in every industry, movie industry and things like that. So the fact that we support that was kind of obvious, but very smart move. And these are the other formats, and they translate from OBJ very simply. So those are the popular formats that are out there now, other than OBJ. And then the creation of the mesh from a point cloud, so in both directions, you can bring the OBJ in, create a point cloud, do operations, and then send it back out. And then one that is, when I asked the spatial team about, they said, yeah, we have that, is simplification, which is actually, in my mind, a really big one. And that's just reducing the number of, polygons of a mesh. But, and I'll talk about a little bit more when I get into automation and things like that. That's actually very powerful because a lot of tools now, they have these different functions for doing that. But it's all of these calculations, of course, are very intensive. And if you're doing design on the client and things like that, it's very compute intensive. And also it's generally a one-off. You have one design, you're doing it, move to the next. And more of these use cases, are becoming mass production and things like that. It's, big workflows. And so the fact that we have a simplification function, it may not seem like much to some people, but to me, that's a big one. And you'll see if you search online, people are looking for that. Because you can write, in the 3D modeling tools and things like that, you can write scripts, Python scripts and things like that. But again, it's on wherever you're designing. It's not on the back end, and that's another big theme of this: is all the power close to the data and on the cloud, not on your CAD local machine or whatever the case may be, even if it's powerful. So you get, that's a big one to me. And then I'll talk about some current projects that I've involved with as far as integration and workflow. And I'm using there's a new Apex workflow engine that's really nice that I'm using for some of this, to put together the pieces. Okay. So the first thing is this, what we call the Oracle 3D Spatial in the digital, immersive, and physical world that we put together for Oracle CloudWorld, as I say. And the digital world is, that digital representation in the database. Immersive is the XR, and physical world is the actual, excuse me, printing out of the of a 3D model on a 3D printer. And so the first experiment we did, which you see here, is using the scanner to scan a hand. And that's my wife's hand. And then in Blender, in a 3D modeling tool, I place an actual, ring on the hand, and then feed both of those OBJ files into Oracle Spatial Database, and then run the diff against them. We get the diff. You see that the diff is the ring, and then you can export, any of that. You can export just the ring, the actual diff, back into an OBJ file. So it's the perfect workflow for, like, as I say, a number of different use cases, and we just happen to use this one. Okay. So in participants that came and had themselves scanned at the workshop, it was really fun. Everybody, it was a really great experience, because it was very popular, and the use cases were just flowing. I've noticed this. There's a moment when people see something that's cool, it spurs immediately them thinking of different use cases. And so when people were coming up to get scanned, the process was people would come, I would do a 3D scan of them with the Einstar Shining 3D scanner I'm going to talk about a bit. And what would happen is they'd be able to, understand, of course, spatial database. That's what our goal was. And then they took home that extremely rich 3D model of themselves in digital format, as well as a 3D printout of themselves. And then I've been, so they have that to take home. And then I've been writing a series of blogs and just posts on LinkedIn on what they can do with that. And so one of them is, animation. This is not really animation per se. This is just the participants spinning in a circle. That's a pretty basic animation, but it's showing them how to auto-reg it so they can move their limbs and do animation. There are pre-built animations and things out there. Okay. So that was one aspect of it. Another aspect is that you can create these MetaHumans. So with AI in particular, this is becoming easy to recreate what Unreal has coined as a MetaHuman, and most people are using that term, MetaHuman, where you do the scan. Again, you store this in the database, and you can do processing on it there, but you can bring it in and have it automatically animated. So this is also what Meta is using. You're storing this in the database, and then when we have actual 3D conferences and things like that in XR, what you're sending is the actual movements. You're not sending a full 3D video of yourself. You're sending these movements, and so this is how this works. And so it makes, by putting it in the spatial database, it makes it very nice. You just do the scan goes right to the database. Then you can have this MetaHuman processed out of the scan, and then you're able to, use it in whatever way you're going to. Okay. And so this works in tandem with a lot of our new AI features, such as the Gen AI feature, facial recognition AI that's coming out early next year. Of course, Vision AI, and the not to be confused with spatial vector, but the vector AI search that's also coming in the Oracle database. Okay. So it all comes together perfectly for, these future use cases. Another thing I did recently was I wrote a game, and it uses nothing but Oracle tech. Okay. I use Unity for the front end, Unity 3D engine, but everything else is on Oracle tech, from Kubernetes. There's Kubernetes, and everything else is Oracle database. Okay. And what you see here is me on the left and my boss on the right scanned in. And rigged for animation, animations applied, and then imported into the game from the database. So I store there are two parts to this, or three parts technically. There's the mesh, the texture that you apply on the mesh, and then the actual animations, and the rigging that, the joints. So that's all stored in the Oracle database. And what's great is, that's the way it has to be done. It has to be stored on the cloud. And generally what's done now is these objects are stored just in object store or something like that. And you can do that, of course, with the Oracle database. You can have the Oracle database front the object store and pull in files as it needs, or replicate, or just put it in the Oracle database, which is what I did here. By doing that, it makes it a very smart way to access your assets, and then, do processing. If, it doesn't have to be a game, obviously, but the gaming industry is huge. So this expands to a large number of cases. But you can do processing such as the anomaly detection with OML. It's a great spot to keep your information rather than just a dumb bucket, that type of thing. So, and then we use observability and everything else. There's a second screen I show where you can trace all of the metrics, logs, and tracing. So this was pretty popular at KubeCon like a month ago. And it's very, everyone is into the bespoke aspect. Everyone that has pictures on their phone of themselves or their family applies to this. So you don't have to be narcissistic or anything. This is something, humans like, is to see themselves. So it's a pretty fun experience, but it also, you can do this and automate it in 30 minutes because of this Oracle tech. You scan it, the workflow I've been working on, it gets into the database and, it does everything I told you about, auto rigging and importing into the game, etc. So it's pretty cool. So now I'll move on to, start moving a little faster here, onto scanning basics. So I'm not going to get into all the different LiDAR, photogrammetry, etc. NERF. They each have their different purpose, and they each have their different quality level. And so what I've did a lot of research on this, tried a lot of different scanners and things like that. And this company, Shining 3D, is really has amazing products, and they have a nice price point. But to give a good experience, I wanted to do something more than the iPhone, because you can take your phone, and Polycam's one of the most popular companies. They're doing some just awesome stuff with their software. But to get, just the real wow, and everyone that got scanned when they looked at their 3D with, said, wow, that's amazing, the detail. You want something a little, above that. So I use the Einstar, which is shown here. And it has, as it says, 3 infrared projectors. So you get down to the 0.1 millimeter accuracy, and it's under $1,000. So they use this for car parts and everything else. I'll go into that a little bit. But it really takes it to that next level. And the other thing nice about the Shining 3D is they really focused on getting not just the mesh, but the colors. So that's one thing, photogrammetry, sitting in a cage with 1,000 cameras gets color very nicely. And that's always been one of the things with, pluses of that. But with the scanner, they've really been able to grab color nicely. So anyway, that's the basics there. These are a couple slides that Shining 3D gave me. So I talk quite a bit with the Shining 3D teams these days, which is great, because we're really coming up with some great collaboration and partnership here. So this is some of their customers and use cases. Their equipment is amazing, as I say, manufacturing, simulation, etc. And a lot of people at Oracle CloudWorld that came up with that we were talking about use cases. The medical and dental field is a huge one for spatial and 3D printing and scanning. And so what you see here is one of their big customers, or number of customers they have in use cases, is this digital scanning solution. So you can do diffs, on the teeth, then you can go ahead and print out, you know, prosthetics and things like that, not just for teeth. So that's a very popular use case. And then this is kind of what I was talking about, how they really got the texture quality down. It's just super impressive company if you read up on their tech, you know, and they're involved in standards and everything. So I'm a big fan of them, obviously. Here's some more, as I say, that dental is a good one, the car parts. This is some of their equipment. So they have, you know, robots, as far as scanning. When I'm obviously doing hand scanning and you have to get at different angles, these robots handle that. And then what's I'm getting into a lot now is the actual workflow. Because when I did this, even, you know, when you get hands-on and when I did this little experience thing where I scan people and then you have the digital and then print them out, the bottleneck was the modeling. Okay, so first of all, I didn't have full integration with all the simplification and et cetera in the Oracle database yet, which I do now, and I use that afterwards. But there's a bottleneck when you go to do the actual, you got the scan, now you need to tweak it in whatever program you're using, CAD or 3D modeling, et cetera. So working on that workflow. So for example, what I'm doing right now is, when we did a 3D printout of people, what we did is we actually made just to make it fun, we made it actually a toothpaste cap. So we took the 3D model of the person, took just the bust, just the head of the person, put it on a Oracle 3D 23C database, like an actual database 3D model, and that's a toothpaste cap, and then printed it. Well, putting those two things, simplifying it, doing that cut and putting it on there, and then sending it to the printer, I was doing all that manually. And so that took time. And so I'm now automating that, working with the API that Shining 3D exposes in their software, and with the printer stuff, which I'll get into in a bit. And in the Oracle Spatial Database, I'm looking for a plane, like that straight cut, adhere it to the base, send it to the printer. So that's the type of workflow. Again, mine's a fun one, but that's kind of what you see as a need in the workspace, because otherwise, like I say, you're doing this manually. And when it comes to production and things like that, which I'll talk about more, you know, that's just not going to scale. You're going to need something on the back end, and you're going to need something that's intelligent. So this is kind of more of the same that I was just talking about. Another use case, when I was at CloudWorld there, a couple of military guys were saying, you know, that this is big, and the Oracle Spatial could be very valuable for them. And interestingly enough, I'm always buying and selling, so I'm always getting like the latest scanners and printers and stuff. And one of the printers I sold to was an ex-military guy, and he was saying the same thing. He was getting it to print, buying my old printer to print military parts and Christmas light, like frame type setup. He has one of these massive Christmas setups. So it's a huge, interesting community to 3D printing. But anyway, it's for military, especially as it says here, for like legacy machinery and things like that. It has saved a tremendous amount of money, because you can scan it, reverse engineer it, print out the piece, and use it in the military. So especially if you can do analytics on it in the database, you know, you can imagine all the different use cases. Again, this speaks to automation. So it's the scanning, the model, the data, import it into the database, do the analysis, display the errors, you know, and do the reporting. Again, it opens up to all these use cases. And I kind of just want to give you guys I don't want to go so deep into it, but, you know, using Oracle Analytics and Oracle Database Analytics, you can imagine how robust it can be, instead of a guy sitting in front of CAD and then trying to size it up and things like that. Okay, printer basics. There are two basic types of 3D printers. There's the the resin-based and filament-based. And basically, just to make this quick, resin is kind of a three-step process. You have the printer has a bed of actual liquid, resin, and there's a plate that drops down, and the resin is light sensitive, so it burns off layers of the resin from below. So the laser comes off, burns off a layer. This plate comes down, it burns off the layer, and then it lifts up. The resin flows back in, comes down, burns another layer, keeps building up layers, and it comes up. Okay. You then need to clean that and cure that. But the resin resolution is nice. And I mean, if you were at CloudWorld, if you've seen some of these, the resolution is unbelievable, down to the hairs of the printout. So, curly hair, everything that they couldn't do like a year or two ago. It is amazing, the resolution. And it has to be, of course, they're printing parts for, spaceships and things like that, including these on, for Mars to actually print out replacement parts and things like this, right? So it has to be that accurate. It's not just for toothpaste caps. So anyway, that's very smooth. The filament is extremely accurate as well, but it has these striation levels that have to be corrected. And they're not terrible, but it's not smooth like resin. But filament is actually more and more the kind of what's used in industry, because the way it works is it's actually, you can think of resin, it's building at bottom, it's lifting it up with that plate. The filament, actually, there's a nozzle that moves around and draws it from bottom up. And it heats up, there's a nozzle, it heats up the filament, which comes in as a string, and then draws it out and builds it up layer by layer like that. Okay. And so and you don't have to wash it or cure it afterwards. So it's much more automated. You're not dealing with resin and things like that. And you'll see it, that's used a lot in industry. Both are, but, different use cases generally. So then there's modeling software. And then here, the collaboration with Shining 3D is more hands-on. When I say collaboration here, this is really just me doing integration with Prusa and others. Okay, so Prusa is this guy's a genius from the Czech Republic. He kind of moved up 3D printing ahead single-handedly by years by making both the machines and the software. And the software is completely open source. So this is another like open source success story where everybody just contributes to this. And what the slicer is it's basically taking your 3D model, your OBJ, or most commonly this STL file format is used. And of course you can convert them back and forth. And it's creating the slice layers. I'm talking about printing in these slices. It converts it to this G-code language. And G-code language is, basically has the mesh information, but it also says things like, heat when you're doing filament, you have to heat the filament to a certain temperature. You can imagine it's a very precise engineering feat. It has all that information. That's G-code. So that's basically what it's doing, but it's doing it for all these different types of printers. And because it's open source, it's very robust, and we can integrate with it nicely. So I'm sending from the Oracle Spatial out to this Prusa interface using this open source library to do the printing. Again, I'm working this in. But just to give you an idea, and this is old. I think this is from 2020. This is Prusa's workflow solution. Or not workflow solution, but like mass production solution, automated farm, that's the word. So this came out years ago, and it's 3D printing's really so wild because you can actually print out parts of this farm to build the farm to print out things, So it's really changing the manufacturing industry because a lot of people are just making these things at home. And they come up with an idea, they prototype it, printing things out takes like 40 minutes on these new machines. And they're able to create these, factories in their house. Like another person I talked to, and someone that bought the one of my old printers. I said, what are you using? Or he told me what he's using it for. And he said for jewelry. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I look it up. This, the fake jewelry or the manufactured jewelry industry is a massive industry, and it's growing, many billions. So just so many use cases again. And anyone can take this and set up these farms in their house, or set up a basic printer. It doesn't take too much to learn it. So it's really changing things. You get a free Oracle database to try it out. You get a cheap old printer. You have an idea for a product. You set up a workflow, and you're off on for your ideas. Pretty cool. So now I'm going to start going into talking about XR. And there's a term that was coined, digital triplet, and it's pretty close to what I want to talk about in this space, which is you have your digital twin, you have your physical and your digital representation of an object and or a process. And a digital triplet is kind of moving into the original digital triplet definition is just the fact that you're now adding a third thing, which is the interaction with that object. It's not just the physical attributes of it, but what happens with this physical interaction. But the other thing I talk about, or I want to refer to, is the XR space, as I say, the digital, real, and immersive world, and that also includes these interactions. Okay, and so real quick with XR. Has come a long way. So this is another example where I scanned her, and you see on the right there, the 3D scan of her. I'm viewing her with mixed reality with the Magic Leap glasses, which is another collaboration I have with Magic Leap and HoloLens. And so you can see here how you have your digital on the computer, you have the real world there, and then you have the immersive world. And this is another, like I say, when you show someone this, they get the wow experience, and then immediately after the wow experience is the flood of innovation and use case ideas, just like Spatial at CloudWorld and things like that I saw people, just, you can't help. And with this, actually, when I've done this with a number of people, it's a very emotional reaction, right? Because seeing yourself in a picture and is one thing, but then being able to walk around yourself, and the resolution is so real. Like I say, a number of people have had reactions to it, emotional because of just what it is, and then also because wow, I can use this to talk to my parents in China. I can use this like in the future for and not to mention the industrial use cases for this as far as collaboration and such. So it's pretty amazing. And what I've done, this is actually another workshop that I took and made an XR version of it. So there's a graph workshop that shows all the different Oracle graph models that you can use. And the main use case is for money laundering. So you can trace patterns of the flow of money through bank accounts. Okay. And so I just took that exact thing and made an XR version of it, pulling the Oracle Spatial into the app I wrote in XR and HoloLens, in this case, using Unity. But what I added in addition to that is the ability to collaborate. So again, this is like the same concentric graph as in the workshop, but it's 3D, so I can reach out with my hand and grab these. Each of these are accounts, and the lines are transactions, and you can reach out and interact with it. But what I'm also doing here is I'm sending messages so that you can collaborate in real time with other people. And so again, this is another converged database thing. We actually have a messaging engine in the database for something like 20 years now, way before Kafka, although we expose it with Kafka APIs. So again, it's adaptable that way, or compatible. And so again, all you need is the database, and you're sending messages to collaborate in real time. But I'm also storing the state. So whenever somebody changes something in a model, and this is graph, but the same thing is certainly true of a point cloud or mesh. you move a point around, you can record the changes you made in the database and then play them back. And then also when you're playing them back, stop it and introduce a different action. You know what I mean? So you can play out scenarios and capture them and have versions and things like that. So, and again, this is just all Oracle database stuff, nothing else. Okay, so that brings me around to this. I think I probably mentioned this 1,000 times, but it really is. It's awesome that all this is in the database because it's in one spot. You get all the HA, you get all the administration, etc. Even if you're a Kafka or a Mongo devotee, that interface actually works on the Oracle database. So it's not just open standards, but it's actually other products APIs work on the Oracle database. And then it's all on the server side, because in general, even though, iPhones and all this have gotten powerful, they're not going to do this, all the AI crunching, these massive spatial models, even, and like, for example, when I talked about that simplification, you can use that simplification function in Oracle Spatial on the server and have different levels. So, depending on the bandwidth, you simplify down to this level, it's some phone with on a dial-up modem or something. You can adjust to that, and it's on the cloud on the server side, and it has to be. And so all the processing is close to the data, and so it's just it's a perfect solution. This again is just what I just mentioned about open standards, all the different languages, as Karin was saying, every single language, including the latest. So if you're familiar with microservices, if you're familiar with what's called WebAssembly, WASM, this is kind of the next generation of microservices, very lightweight, very fast WebAssembly modules. And Rust is the most popular language for that. We support that, so you get that lightweight aspect, but all the power and functionality of that Oracle database. So everything is, covered. And so, with that, I just come back to this original slide that we always have, where it's, any data type, any workload. And this, again, as she was mentioning, all the different versions of the database are supported. And so actually, I thought I was rambling, but I guess I got ahead, got done with 10 minutes to spare. If anybody has any questions or any use cases, if anybody has any use cases they want me to explore, I'll do work for you, because I love taking interesting use cases and trying to work them out. So in any case, let me know, and I appreciate it. Let me see.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Paul. Maybe before we go into the discussion, let me just finish with some more information. So let me take over and share my screen. So we left off this slide. And okay, just a few more things where you can find more information. Paul mentioned Live Labs. So this is a great source to have a look at, because there you find plenty of workshops for all technical things you're probably looking for. And it's basically a step-by-step guide to implement something. And I can only recommend using Live Labs, or at least checking it. And if you should miss something, just let us know, and we are happy to pick it up and create a Live Lab. Or if you have developed something you are looking to share with others, we can turn it into Live Labs workshops as well. So just let us know. What else do we have? Maybe LinkedIn. So Paul also mentioned that he publishes his work, or he promotes his work on LinkedIn. We do have this Oracle Spatial and Graph group on LinkedIn. In case you haven't seen it yet, and you are on LinkedIn, just check it out so you get some current information about what we are working on, what we have released, what's new with Oracle Spatial, and also graph technologies. Yeah, just join the group so you get this information directly. We also contribute to the developer blog at Oracle. We do have these specific categories, and one of the category is spatial. So check this out as well. And beside the live labs, we also do some kind of step-by-step hands-on things on as a blog as well. So it's highly recommended to check those out as well. And if you want to look for recordings where we've presented things, there is a YouTube channel where we also make those recordings public. This is one to have a look at, and let me just finish with the last one. If you have a question and you don't want to send us an email, or if you think this question could be of interest for others as well, then we recommend using a forum. So there are the different Oracle forums where you can post your questions, which we monitor frequently in order to provide you with answers. You can also use Stack Overflow. The best would then be to tag your question with Oracle Spatial. And for those who like to use Slack for communication, we also have this Oracle Devs Slack workspace, and there is a channel called Oracle -DB Spatial where you can post your questions as well, or you can directly connect to somebody and ask something you're interested in. And I think that's a part where we can check if you have some questions. So I can't find any questions in the Q&A, but you're free to stand up virtually and ask your questions now, if there are.
There are no questions from the audience. I have a quick one. Paul, is there any opportunity to see your 3D scanning, 3D printing setup from CloudWorld live again sometime early next year, maybe in Europe or anywhere else?
Yes, exactly. So I'm writing up. I'm to the whole live lab thing. That is the kind of the natural process. I'll be writing live labs of that actually, so people can do it themselves. But part of that is the instruction set for us doing this at other conferences. So yeah, there are at least 3 others where we're going to do this, and I hope to have the workflow that I mentioned done for those as well, so you can really see how easy it is. So the short answer is yes. Yep.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, actually the same for the game. I'm going to open source that in the next couple weeks. So people can grab that, because that immediately comes to mind if you look at these forums, as I was mentioning, just that simplify. When I asked, they're like, "Oh yeah," Mark was saying, "Yeah, we got that in the database already," because people are just they want that type of basic functionality. They just want to. There's the thing where you're an artist and you're crafting your 3D models, and then there's the thing where I have 100 models and they're all too big, or or I want to see the difference between them and things like that. So anyway, I'm going to do the same thing. There are a couple other conferences where we're going to have the game, and then I'm going to open source that and make that a workshop so people can take it and run with it. So
Paul, you actually mentioned that you're working on an integration in Apex using the new workflow feature of Apex. Can you tell
exactly.
something more about that one? And are you going to present that during the next Apex Connect in Germany?
Oh, I didn't think of that part. That would be great. I'd love to get over there. That'd be an excuse if nothing else.
We'd love to see you there.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know about as far as that's a good point. We should officially roll that out. But yeah, that's something. So we've developed or I should say, Ralph Mueller is should get.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, my background is transactions, so I know Ralph from that because we're putting transactions into the Saga, or in Saga transactions into the workflow product. So I know that they just put out a nice blog series that includes a flow of for a hospital. Very popular use case as far as the workflow being slow in discharging patients. So I've taken that and they say no one's written any original code in 60 years or something. I've taken that workflow and I put in like I say, working with the Shining 3D guys, their API. And so that workflow changes to you take the scan API. That's another thing, if people don't know on the call, is at the database, you can do call outs to every other cloud service. Super easy, either using PL SQL or JavaScript or Java. And so it calls out, it gets the API brings in the 3D scan right from the scanner into the database. And then the next part of the flow is it's a great for a workflow too, because it has automatic and human intervention points. It brings it in. The part I'm working on is the analysis as far as taking the two pieces and putting them together on the same plane. Then when that's done, there's a human aspect where it says, okay, does this look okay? You look at it. And if it looks okay, then go for it. It'll send it to the printer through that Prusa open source API, and then just print it out. So it's, and that's fun, but that's a factory too, right there. Right there's your factory for your idea. And then that'll be a live lab. And then, yeah, we should definitely roll that out to a conference. I'd love to present that. Yeah.
Sounds great. So very impressive. Thanks a lot.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, my pleasure.
So, actually, the call for papers for the Apex Connect, I think it ended yesterday, but in case you still want to submit a paper or a presentation, just get in touch with the Apex team. So Ralph Müller would be the person to check with, so to make sure that
great. Yep, definitely.
You're considered to present there. Okay, so there is one question Giant has taken care for. And Amin, you asked when the conference, the Apex Connect is in Germany. I think you meant the Apex Connect. So Hans hopefully has checked the exact date. I know it's either in April or May. I'm not 100% sure. I know for sure it's in Düsseldorf. So Hans will provide you with possibly with the link so you can check the date. Okay, any other questions? If not, we reached the top of the hour. Thank you very much, Paul. It was very exciting. So yeah, I'm very grateful to have you presenting this session or the part here during the session, and we're looking forward to do more of those things with others who have done fabulous things with spatial technologies. And just to let you know, we won't have another Ask Tom session for Spatial this year. This is because we typically do it at the end of the month, and at the end of next month, hopefully everybody takes a short break or a longer break to to review the last year and maybe yeah, get some new energy for the next year. So that's why we will have the next session at the end of January, and you will see it posted in the Ask Tom dashboard. Thanks everybody for joining us, and have a relaxing, peaceful rest of the year. Take care of yourself and see you next year.
Thanks.
Thank you.